So your love language is touch then.
Number one, number two, number three, number four.
Let's talk about that. There's different kinds.
Let's talk about that.
There's like like you're at the movies and you're like this, and then there's just like reckless,
They usually
Depends
there's a
on my
direct
mood.
correlation from studies that have been done have shown that the person that likes we're at the movies, I want you to have your arm over me, is usually the type of person that
Yeah.
Have you guys heard of the 5 love languages?
Yes.
You guys know about that?
Please do
Yeah?
expand on that.
Yes.
Okay,
I haven't
cool.
read the whole
Expand.
book, so I want to hear the Cliff's Notes.
Really? Oh, I love this. All right, so this is when I get to actually know people. Do you know about it?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
I know 100% about it.
Yes, 100%. So you basically have to figure out what someone's love language is. And especially when you're in an intimate relationship, this is so important because people like to receive love differently, right?
Right.
And same thing with the feeling of infatuation, right? And so the first sign that you might have for your love language might be words of affirmation. So there are some people that they constantly need to be reminded, they need to be told that you're beautiful, that you're pretty, that you're appealing, right? And they take pleasure in receiving compliments. Now, some people are not words of affirmation, some people are time, right? And so their love language is, if you're spending time with me, that's how I know you really love me, right? And you might tell them, okay, well, I love you, I love you, I love you, or you're so beautiful, you're so attractive. But if the woman feels like, you're not showing me because we don't spend time together, to them it means nothing, right? And then you have the third type of person, which basically their love language can be touch. Okay, and they're very sensual, and you can say that you love them, you can give them compliments all day. You could basically spend time with them.
But if you don't fuck them, then they don't feel loved, for sure.
Those
Or
the
even
people
like
of touch.
this
But
little-
Or
even
just like
this.
touching, okay.
So for me, I'm very touch, right?
Okay.
And so as I get comfortable with someone, I do like to
Clearly.
give me some hugs. Yeah,
Clearly.
He's gonna give some hugs, yeah, clearly. You see?
He's a lover. He's like deep into intimacy now.
And then another one is gifts. So check this out, right? I used to feel like repulsive, kind of like when I would meet women or date women and they just got happy when I got them gifts. Like, I'm a giver, I like to give, right? So I'll get you some gifts. But then if I see like you're upset because I didn't get you a gift, I used to take like, what is that? Like, are you...
But how about like a thoughtful gift? That counts also.
So I didn't know the difference. Because for me, I like to do things big. I always like to go for the top. I always like to go for what's great. And so if I'm giving you a gift, I want to give you a gift that I feel is like really like a gift. And I realized after reading this book, The 5 Love Languages, that people that receive gifts oftentimes as they grew up had a parent figure, usually of the opposite sex, that would give them little things. It could have been, okay, I just came back from work. Here's a lollipop, right? Or here's a flower just because. Yep. And for them, what it is psychologically is just the fact that you brought something back shows that you were thinking of me when I wasn't with you. And for me, I didn't see that because it's like if I'm giving you a gift, it's a birthday
It stems from the parenting. That's a good point. I actually have a very good example of this, the love language. So and it levels like a different way. So like mine leads from quality time to acts of service, and then it was physical touch, and then words of affirmation, and then I literally had like a 0 on gifts. So I was like, I really don't care about like the whole gifts.
Are you sure that touching is not number one for you?
I am positive. It's time. And so I went on a trip with a man that I was extremely attracted to, like immediate chemistry there. But when we went on this trip, I often found myself, every activity we did, we went to a wine vineyard, we went to a museum or something, I would find myself like by myself.
Oof.
He would just kind of veer off and do something, and in his mind he's thinking he's giving me space. And then he would come back with these gifts.
Yeah.
It's
And I was
interesting
like,
that you say that.
What is going on? I don't understand. Like, I was confused, and in his mind he's like, well, I'm giving you gifts, I'm showing you affection, that's how I show affection. So I just was kind of like, yeah, that's not my love language.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's so good that you understand this, though.
Did you know about the love language when that was happening, or did you just like get the
I
feeling?
recognized it.
It was like the feeling was like...
I didn't discredit him for it. I just understood, okay, this is how he shows. And he just doesn't know how I am, so I need to communicate that. And I did, and now he gets it.
In your practice, do you see this being a huge issue for the couples that come to therapy with you?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, I do a lot of the love languages with my couples because there's a difference between loving someone the way that they think that they should be loved
Yeah.
versus actually finding out what it is. I think as women, we're fixated on this idea of communication, and don't get me wrong, communication is important, but for men, they haven't really learned how to communicate well, because communicating about emotions is a threat to your masculinity, right? At least
So
we're like
good.
Colombian men, you know, you talk about emotions, it's just not something that's acceptable. And so I think when we think about acts of service, when we think about gifts, when we think physical touch, I help them find that middle ground. It is so important to listen and acknowledge without having to agree. Can't emphasize
Can you
that
say that louder?
It is so important to listen and acknowledge without having to agree.
Oh, thank you, Jesus. Highlight that shit.
And communication, you know, telling someone how you feel is important, but being able to listen. When you listen, you're really not only holding the space, but witnessing that person's story and expanding. Curiosity is the
Curiosity, I love that word. Highlight that one too.
Curiosity is the glue that keeps a long-term relationship together.
How do you think you find the difference between, like, for example, it's something very interesting what you said. So you think you need to be loved in a way, but maybe what really will change your life is to be loved in a different way. Would that happen? Would your partner show you the way? Or would you show the way to your partner when you come into a relationship to give and not to get?
Well, I think what keeps us from showing our partner the way that we want to be loved is that we start making assumptions and we have certain expectations when we start the relationship, right? So I think part of helping the other person understand is kind of having this open dialogue, but really having emotional flexibility. I think you guys were talking earlier about taking things personal, right? If somebody arrives late to my session, I can say, hey, Juan, how come? What happened? And then I'm listening to the story versus you don't respect my time.
Yeah.
It's a narrow vision of your behavior, and I have no emotional flexibility, right? So I think that idea of learning what this looks like, but you know, you have to have a certain level of stability, and you have to have a certain level. The saddest part about my job is that a lot of my couples come in when the damage has been done.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you guys, I'm a therapist and a freaking magician.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Right? There's so much anger and resentment. So I could talk, I think, to answer your question, what doesn't allow people to guide one another, resentments are rooted in pain, but they're expressed in anger.
Oof, that's powerful.
Right? And that's kind of like what doesn't let us see each other. We can be right sitting in front of the other, but kind of like, you know, space where it has that fog that you can see each other.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. And so I think there's a lot of barriers that doesn't help us like connect emotionally the way that we should and we want to.
So you have to break out like a boss with expectations.
Yes.
With trying to get instead of give. What else is there? Something else very, very important. Oh, to not have a narrow emotional ability to open up to people, right? That's very interesting because you have to be emotionally open to like be able to be perceptive, you know, like receptive. So how, like, what advice would you give to couples to do maybe the studying and the self-development earlier in the relationship, perhaps, so the damage is not done?
We have to remind ourselves that the passion and the excitement and I want to eat you, you know, last, you know, 6 months to maybe 2 years.
Or one day.
We start to move in. On one day, right? Hey.
Or one day.
Hey, whatever tickles your pickle, you know. But I think, you know, if you start to feel like you're not understanding each other, have someone help you facilitate that conversation. When couples come in, when they haven't gone to that resentment and anger part yet, wow, the work that you do is amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
You can almost see like the attachment, really, because you got to remember that when we start a new relationship, we have a little emotional suitcase where I bring family of origin, where I bring my attachment style, where I bring previous experiences. If I went through a divorce, if somebody really hurt my heart and I haven't worked and healed, right, then I'm gonna bring that back, you know, to the first relationship. People work when they say, well, I've been single for a year. Okay. And I have a new body and I have a new hair, but we don't work on the mind, which is the brains of the whole operation.
Exactly. 100%. So this is funny that you mentioned this because I tried to get therapy when I was going through my divorce, and I just, like, he couldn't do it, you know? And I wish he did, because then I started going to therapy alone, and that's what brought me to being the boss of my new life, because I did all the self-development alone. I just feel so sad that he didn't jump into it, because even if we didn't stay together, it would have been like amazing for him to just go to therapy to get to know himself better and heal, which is very important. You know what I mean? He wasn't open or emotionally open to learn something new. I don't know, to maybe like make things better. Isn't it crazy how it can affect somebody's world not to be emotionally open and curious, trying to learn something in therapy? I mean, even if we didn't stay together, you would learn so much about yourself.
But probably the way, because it sounds like the way that you were seeing it is, I want to improve, I want to grow. The way that maybe he was seeing it, it's problem based. We don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. So
Oh my God, he said that all the time. He's like, I'm perfect. It's you, not me.
and there's
the
this
worst.
great idea that if you want to change the other, you got to start by changing yourself.
Exactly.
Right? Relationships are made of interdependent parts. If I take a different approach, eventually you're going to adapt.
Yeah.
But that's probably the difference between you two, that you were seeing it as I want to grow into, and he was seeing it like, no, we don't have a problem and I don't want to be late.
Oh my God, that's so powerful what you're saying, because that's exactly the breaking point for us, because he couldn't see that we had a problem. And I was like, even if for self-development, you know, like let's go to therapy and try things out, because you have to try many things and fail at them for you to be good at something, right?
Absolutely.
And it just like that will for me like really kill me.
So I think with relationships, right? Relationships, number one, it's like it's a journey, right? It's not just a thing that's stagnant. Okay, I think you were talking about that earlier. But what it also is a bridge. Okay, so it's a bridge. And so you talked about how people come in with this luggage, and based on their life experiences, based on what they've seen on TV, based on how they've seen their parents, their friends, your mind is either saying that's right or that's wrong, right? You see your best friends in a relationship, and then you see that they're not in a relationship. In your mind, you're either thinking that's right, like that they broke up, or you're thinking no, that's wrong and it shouldn't be that way. But based on all these experiences, you have your own set of rules, okay? And so everyone has their set of rules. It's like a puzzle. And I feel like when you get in a relationship, what most people don't do is take enough time to figure out what's this person's puzzle, what's their rule system really like? Because in the beginning, it's easy. When the infatuation is there, when the attraction is there, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, I love spending time with you. But then you have rules as to love languages, how much time we should spend together, which you weren't consciously thinking of.
Everyone has a measurement of their own morality.
Yeah.
And their
So
value
you have to-
system. Yeah.
Correct. And that's in my opinion, and most important thing when you're dating, to figure out about the other individual.
You have to, for sure.
Earlier rather than
Because-
later, right?
Correct.
Yeah, because if the person sees it as it's regular for us to spend all our time together. Like some people, it's like, okay, we're each working, but in my ideal view of a relationship, it's like when we're not working, we should spend our time together. And then you have other people, usually male, that are thinking, okay, cool, I worked all day. I'm tired. I literally want to get home. I want to grab a cold beer. I want to watch TV. Like, don't bother me. Our date night's not till Saturday. And for some people, their rules in their mind is it's okay for us to be affectionate 1 time or 2 times a week, and for me to have my own space, and the other person might feel rejected.
Yeah.
And it's the same way when it comes to communication. Some people feel like, look, I don't want to talk after a long day of work about my day. Like the last thing I want to do is talk, and the other person feels like a loss of love or attraction because you don't want to talk. Why is it you want to talk to your friends, but you don't want to talk to me?
I hate talking. We can just like hook up and then that releases all the stress and then we move on.
So your love language is touch then.
Number one, number 2, number 3, number 4.
Let's talk about that. There's different kinds.
Let's talk about that.
There's like like you're at the movies and you're like this, and then there's just like reckless, hook it up.
They usually,
Depends
there's a
on my
direct
mood.
correlation from studies that have been done have shown that the person that likes we're at the movies, I want you to have your arm over me, is usually the type of person that I want you to own me when we're in the fucking bedroom.
Exactly. It's so hard to find
You
a
just
dominant.
What did you just say though?
Huh?
You just said to
She touched my arm.
that you're just like, I don't want to be touched except for in the bedroom.
No. The touching is like all the time. Like that's my number one
you
thing.
want it all the time.
That
So you
solves
want to hold
everything.
hands and hold
That
boobs.
solves everything.
And you want to be
Yeah.
walking down the street arm in arm, and you want to do all that stuff too.
No.
There's some annoying touch.
Depends on my mood.
Yeah, like
Your
PDA
point,
versus
okay.
like touch me all over, like in the kitchen or whatever.
I prefer not to be so touchy-feely on the street, but in the bedroom is a different story. Because I feel like that's something so intimate. How do you like to be touched?
Well,
Let's talk about you.
jump right in.
Yeah, let's talk about
The reason why I asked that question is because, for example, if you're cooking, let's just say you're washing dishes or whatever, and someone comes over to you and they just put their hand on your back, or they,
I love that.
Stuff like that is different than just like, clear off the counter right now.
Well, it depends on the situation.
It does.
It depends on the situation. Where you're cooking for your man, that's an intimate relationship. It's different. There is like intimacy, there's a different like energy to it.
Yeah.
When you are like fucking, then obviously you're gonna destroy the apartment. Do you know what I mean? But each case is a different, depends on the person.
It's the same person. Okay, I get it.
And we were talking about this. We can all have different personalities and try different things until we find what we like, and keep on trying them over and over. Remember, we were saying like you can be whoever you want to be. Why just like narrow it down? Where we're talking about emotional openness. Why narrow it down like who you are?
Because I think that's when you're in a world that forces you to be cerebral and label things. You don't live freely. You don't just. It's the judgment thing we're talking about.
Let's break it like a boss with that. We're in the magic zone. Judgment is a huge one.
Especially in fitness. When I consult with women, that they don't want to like buy a meal plan, and I mean they do, but they don't. They really want to feel sexy in front of their partner because they don't like their cellulite, or they don't like the way they see themselves, even though their partner says, you're okay, whatever, we've been married for 10 years, love you. No, they don't like their cellulite. They don't want to be naked with their partner.
Do you think that will come maybe because they're not getting enough sex? So they're saying they like you, but then they're not fucking you. Then you see how the twist comes on. It could be confusing for women. It could be confusing.
Or is it that they don't want the sex that they're being offered?
Oh, perfect response.
You mean like if a man has a wife that let herself go, and it's socially unacceptable to have cellulite.
You have to be vocal and ask for what you want.
It's acceptable to be that dude that just gains a pot belly because it's manly.
But you know what else I find interesting? That people have a really hard time defining what sexy means to them. It's being sexy defined by what we see versus, when do you feel sexy? Like, what is that little dress in your closet that you have that when you wear it, you look in the mirror and there's a certain something, and it doesn't have to be tight or it doesn't have to be short. But I think, for a lot of women, first of all, how can you wear sexy and how do you define it, right? And to go back to that point, is it that they don't want to have the sex that's being offered, right? If the guy's like, hey,
can we highlight that again? They don't want the sex that they are being offered. So then you're gonna be vocal and ask for what you want, because you ask the universe for what you want, right? So then you ask, please give me a dominance.
But is that because they're not being like offered the sex that they want? Is that the reason that they want to come and look for how can I get rid of the cellulite? Or is it maybe, right? Is there a possible thought that maybe they just don't feel like they're attractive to their man too? Maybe it's not that they're rejecting that.
But it's in here. Well, because
maybe they
could be getting it. They could be getting it, but it's in here because they're innately not happy. Society tells you that cellulite is bad. Society tells you that if you don't have a big booty, whether it's real or fake, you're not in. But like in the 90s, if you weren't Kate Moss skinny, you weren't attractive. So they're letting society get in their head, and they're picking at their cellulite.
Yes.
But that's what they're manifesting as like the source of their, I'm not confident. Because I'm going to tell you all the buzzwords I hear when I consult.
And that's in your body language.
Confidence,
of course.
Cellulite, I don't have abs, or I don't have, they don't have things, but the root of it is confidence. The root of it is they're miserable. And so they're snapping at their husband because they don't like who they are.
Exactly.
Then they're snapping at their kids. So now they're a shitty mom. And it's like, now you're just a bad woman in their head, right? Now I'm just a bad woman, and I'm don't even want to be naked because I don't want to be naked in front of him.
There's a fear.
Yes, it's all fear and insecurity.
In my perspective, there's a fear that they're holding on to, they can't get past, and that is preventing them from moving forward. Identify what that fear is.
Yeah, you have to know the why. Why does it make you feel like that? You have to get to the core of things.
Identify it, acknowledge it, and then do what you need to do to get over it.
Hey guys, welcome to Break Up Like a Boss, your YouTube channel and podcast where you are going to get inspired and create magic. What is your intention, purpose, and passion in your life? What do you have to break up with in order to be the boss of your new one? What is your legacy? We are going to help you find out what is people going to miss you for when you're not longer around. we have a great panel, so stay tuned and check it out.